Get me out of the way. Want me to where having it. Get me out the way. Want me to where having it. Yeah. Get me out of the way. Want me to where having it. Get me out the way. Want me to where having it. Yeah.
Coming up right now, it's a double up on slow horses. After that, it'll be the Batman versus the Dark Knight, and then we'll take a look at the Lego Star Wars Skywalker trilogy. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome to your Tuesday night home for general interests, movies, games, shows, and even books, past, present, and future. I'm your host, Petey York. I am also joined by...
Me, John.
Him, John, and, of course...
Coraon, your witch in residence here on YouTube.
Yep, we decided to try to move to Tuesdays. Seemed to be better for everyone's schedules. So that's why we're here doing this now. But first of all, Coraon, we kind of missed you on the last episode. Just curious.
I was called away on a little bit of an emergency situation, but it's all sorted out now.
Good, good. Well, I got a question for you. Is the Severance finale still fresh on your head, or fresh enough to talk about it?
Yeah, crazy fascinating stuff, man. I did not expect it to go down exactly that way, but it's really cool how they put that together. And now I'm, with the end of a season, like a season finale like that, it drives me crazy because now I gotta wait almost a year, I think, until the new season starts.
Yeah, something like that. But we missed you that time, and wanted to give you a quick minute, maybe take 10 minutes or so to quickly give us your thoughts, since you didn't get to last time, on what you thought, and we'll just let you have it for a minute. If that,
sure. Well, I mean, to me, the biggest pieces of this is we finally started to see some of the crazy puzzle we've been watching kind of unraveling a little bit, right? We've got Innie's waking up, we've got Mark's Innie waking up in Devon's home, right? And, hugging Kobold, right? And figuring out that all the craziness that we as the audience have been seeing, now playing out, and we're seeing, kind of more heavy duty stuff. We got to see the current CEO, right? We found out that the Jamie was severed as well, right? But it was more of a publicity stunt than anything else. So, there's a lot there, and now that we've seen all the, we're starting to see a little bit more of the man behind the curtain, and getting more and more information here. It was a more than a little bit mind-blowing, right? And the fact that, things are going along and we're getting a lot, like the Innies are finally learning, a lot about what the what's really going on and who the men and women behind the curtain are. And then they turn off the overtime protocol or overtime contingency, and they're back to their outie state, which I don't think the outies really have much knowledge of how much the innies have figured out and what's going on. Oh man. It did not end the way I thought it was going to, and I'm super curious to see what happens now.
Yeah, I was telling John last week that, and I'm just curious to see if you kind of agree with this or not, or what your take is. The sheer magnitude, the size of the balls on this show to do something like that, a first season cliffhanger that is literally not that far off from the suspense of Best of Both Worlds. And it was a bold play, and it worked. I'm ready to see what happens next. I'm hooked for season 2, so.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I will say this, Best of Both Worlds for Next Gen happened in the season that I think we can all agree the show really found its stride, right?
Yes.
It took them a couple of seasons to get to the point where they could tell a story that deep and that meaningful and that important. And the fact that Severance just went, you know what? We're going to go for that. We're going to go for that level of suspense. We're going to, have the audience banging down the doors at Apple demanding season 2 early. That takes guts to do, but they did it and they executed it flawlessly. So, hey, way to prove that there are amazing writers in Hollywood that deserve our money. Right? That's the best thing I can say. Absolutely.
I mean, it was a very unexpected ending. It was just the whole episode. I was enthralled the entire time, trying to figure out how they're gonna play this out, and it kept going on, and then it ends on a cliffhanger, and I'm like, I don't even know what to expect for season 2. And I like that some of our theories were more or less confirmed, but then the rest of them, they just kind of were like, see how we were leading you that way? We went this way instead. So, and I mean, that's really the staple of good writing, is not being as predictable in the moment. And so, I think season 2 is, I don't know, I was telling John last time, and I think this might be what happens, is we're probably going to see Mark wake up as his innie on the table. And that's where it's going to start, and it's going to kind of begin where the first season went. But that's just my theory. So I'm curious to see what do you think is going to happen though with that.
I think you're probably pretty close to the mark. But I think we might also get. I want to say I think there's a good chance it may start literally 30 seconds from where they left off on the cliffhanger. Like just 30 seconds later, the new episode starts, and they just continue on that arc. And we may even see, instead of we may not see necessarily him waking up on the table. We may see security dragging them all off to the tables. I think that could work as well. And then we could wind up with, finding out more characters through the security office, right? Or through the security team. And maybe they have a different setup than everybody else as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it was quite the ending. I did not see. I honestly thought we were going to get some kind of like half victory situation, like we were talking about, because that's typically what you do with the first season usually. And this is the normal safe play to write a show, is your first season or your first movie, even if you want to do a series and you don't have the rest of the series lined up, is you're basically told, just plan on writing like you're going to be canceled. Tell your whole story that you want to tell first, maybe leave a little bit hooked. Now granted, Apple did already sign off on a second season. So that, I think, is extremely telling about how the pitch must have been, because either they pitched more episodes, or Apple was so impressed with the overall script and plan of season 1 and 2 that they were just like, oh yeah, it's green lit. So even then, that, would that necessarily be a safety net? Well, no, because if you're going into a pitch meeting and you're saying we want to tell our story over 2 seasons, that's a tall order. That is a very tall order to commit to, because you don't know if you're going to have the audience for it. And this show's definitely got an audience. I mean, it's at least got us and the 3 people that listen to our opinion on it, and so it's working somewhere. They're doing something right. Any final thoughts for Severance, though? I mean, sorry to kind of give you a short paraphrase version of your thoughts, but we do have other topics.
Yeah, I think that they're going to take I think we're going to see a new division near the start of season 2 to kind of expand out the company a little bit. And I think, if we don't find out what this company really does by like the 3rd episode of the 2nd season, we're never going to. So I think by episode 3 we're going to find out what this company actually produces, what the team has been doing or is supposed to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. John, did you want to add any quick thoughts on the Severance finale after Coraon's shared his thoughts?
No, I definitely, I still like the way that they did this cliffhanger, because as far as small victories go, this was the absolute smallest victory they could end with. Like, the innies did get a little outside time. Like, they very much ended it with, like, the best possible, like, victory meant nothing to the grand scheme that they're really wrapped up in. And it leaves so much for us to want and wonder.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, all good thoughts. But, we had to double up our homework this last week because we decided to move our days. And with that, it is now time to turn our attention to the current show that we are watching. And that is Slow Horses, episodes 4 and 5. John, why don't you take us in?
Oh my gosh. So we start right where we left off with the agent found decapitated. And as we realize that the complete op has gotten butchered, we find out that that was pretty much the entire intention of sending Slow Horses, the Slough House team, down there. So we start, and through episode 5, it's just a continued progression of the Slough Horses group trying to get together and do like the main job, which is find the missing student, but then at the same time have a secondary, more important job of trying to clear their name. And man, was it exciting the whole time. Like, this show really picked up from 3 into 4 and then 4 into 5. I am just tired of it ending and making me wait a week. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, look, episode 5 is named Fiasco, and you couldn't have come up with a better name for the craziness that they're up to now. I mean, it's quite clear that Slough House is assigned to stuff when they're going to need somebody to blame if everything goes sideways. And, I mean, things went sideways in episode 4 quite efficiently. So, I think we're starting to see kind of that they're there to be the excuse if they ever need one. The question is, like, why would they pick this specific group to do that unless the intention is they get to blame them but still keep them around, kind of thing. Like, they are the whipping horse, for lack of a better term, or the horse that you flog even after it's dead, kind of thing, is the only excuse I can find out for why they would keep them around at this point.
Yeah, I definitely got the vibe, though, that they aren't meant to be that. Like, it really feels like this second desk lady is trying to prove her ability. I think she's making a gun for either first desk or, like, head of the service. And like that's why she orchestrated this whole thing. And then even though she thought she had it in the bag, I feel like this is her arrogance catching up to her. And because Slough House exists, she's using it to her advantage, which is why she's put the group together that she's put together. Like, she's the one dumping them in. Like, she doesn't have to save any of them technically, but she also can't trust that they can be out on their own. So like that's what she created this house for. And not just her, it seems like this group is universally known as the reject spot. But at the same time, she seems to be the one that's like, oh, I have to find a scapegoat. But she wasn't prepared at all.
Yeah.
Because like we're watching her reel. Like all through episode 5, she is just walking herself into a bigger hole.
Yep.
So I don't know, it seems like they weren't meant to be entirely a Suicide Squad, but that's what they're being made out to be.
Yeah, they're definitely, like I said, I think in our last broadcast, they are pretty much. It's interesting that they're basically using the elements of certain theories, like with using the fact that MI5 actually did create a false flag situation. And that's what she's trying to use to make herself look like the hero, and it's almost like they're basically just saying out loud, like, "Oh, look at that, guys! Government intelligence agencies use people. Oh, who would have thought?" Several people have apparently thought. So it's interesting that they're just telling the story and they're being straightforward. I do like it is doing a good job of keeping me guessing. I really liked Gary Oldman's demotivational speech. I thought the delivery on that was so, it was not only so perfect, but it was the fact that Cartwright follows up and says, so that's how you're trying to motivate us, right? And he goes, I honestly don't give a shit about any of you. It's just like trying to keep the persona alive, but I'm starting to see why. The way that he was dealing with, I forgot the character's name off the top of my head. The way he's dealing with the MI5 lady is like he feels he's in a position of power still, and he was, and that's especially what we saw in the latest episode, which I just happened to watch today. And it's like they're playing, they're fighting, they're bickering back and forth with each other over how they're gonna resolve this situation, whereas she's like, oh, I've got you dead to rights, and he's like, well, no, we're kind of in a mutually assured destruction situation here. And then, you know, the whole story with the kidnapping and how that's progressed, and that's just gotten crazier and crazier. I mean, I also got to hand it to him that joke, while funny, it was also very true. You know, when he says, there's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, you're going to need a bigger van. I was like, it's a good one. That was funny. But, and then, of course, you know, he took advantage of that to take control of the situation. I thought that was actually, I did not see that. I didn't see it coming, and then I didn't see the credits roll coming either. I was quite taken back by the pacing of this episode. It was very good. It was very straightforward and to the point this time. It didn't feel like, I think we definitely shifted out of the slow burn. We kind of have an idea of who these guys are, and now it's like, okay, I'm wondering if they're actually going to go with a very clumsy ending for this. And it makes me even more intrigued to read the book, because I'm curious to see how much closer the book is to this show. Are they going to go so far as to actually make it so that by the end of this they still hate each other? And that there is no team coming together moment. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, part of me wants that ending, though. Part of me wants the ending where they're like, you know what? We work well as a team, but I don't want to hang out with any of you. You know, like, we're not going to get drinks at the end of the day. We're all going to just go home, right?
Yeah, I definitely want this to become the live-action Archer style office relationship. That would be hilarious. But with all of the spyness, like they're still doing spy things and like making moves, but just that kind of banter would be fun.
Well, and that's kind of what it feels like a little bit. Now that you mention it, it's kind of like a darker Archer in a lot of ways. Less emphasis on the ridiculousness and the silliness, more emphasis on the real. But we see like Gary Oldman's character, he just what is his motivation at this point? Because one minute I think he does care about him, but then he does something like not only a motivational speech, but then follows it up with, "No, I really don't care." And it's like you still don't understand what Lamb's goals are. And that's actually pretty good, because that leaves us guessing, like, oh, he's actually just the angry old guy who's been through a whole lot, which is probably true, but he may also very well be that angry old guy that does not come around. That does happen in life, where you have something, you have a moment with somebody that you think you're going to get along with, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're buddies now, right? And he's like, piss off. And so I don't know, and that's what I'm enjoying about this show, is it's taken turns and it's gone to extremes that I did not see coming, and I was very happy for that fact. It's an entertaining show. It's very well paced at this point. I think, yeah, once you can get through the first couple episodes, it really takes off after episode 3, and yeah, 4 was a little bit more exposition heavy, but man, 5 came in swinging. So.
Yeah. Well, I think you needed 4 to make 5 make sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Definitely.
I felt like it's more just the pacing in general is very clearly picking up. Like, the first couple episodes felt like it was flashing over like a week events. And the last 2, 4 and 5, have been over the last like 5 hours. Yeah. If that. And I think that's like really fun. And also kind of brings back that like 24 vibe with Jack Bauer doing his thing. Like, that's kind of what I'm getting as far as just the pacing of this show. Like, I feel like it's only going to ramp up and get worse for a time before it ends on the spies saved the day and nobody knows they did kind of note.
Yeah, I'm still kind of hoping for they wind up saving the day purely by accident. So nobody can really take credit for it, but the day is saved. And they've just kind of be, like the glory hogs in the unit have no way of getting anything out of this, and they kind of throw their hands up like, yeah, we saved the day, whatever, and go back to brooding and being annoyed.
Yeah,
and they're gonna do it in such a way that they don't earn any passage up.
Exactly.
Like, it just kind of hardens their position at Slough House.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be like one of those. Oh yeah, we saved the day and we're not going to jail, but we're still in Slough House, and that's, yeah. I definitely could see that being the end result. And what I like about that too is even theorizing that it doesn't even necessarily ruin the ending, because we still don't know how this is going to end.
Right.
Oh, no.
I just thought of the funniest thing that could be Gary Oldman's speech at the very end. This is why we don't work. Go to your desk and sit there until 5:30 and go home.
Yeah. Credits roll, season over. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. Just kind of like that, that scene from Avengers where they're all, sitting around the table eating, looking at each other, and Gary Oldman just says a line like, "I told you guys not to work," and then that's the show right there. Oh man, that would be, yeah, that could definitely happen, or something like that. It's like I said, the show's growing on me. Some of the characters are growing on me. I think the more timid agent who's already willing to sell out Lamb, he's probably going to be one of those that is, as Coraon says, is like, yeah, we work together, but that's it. We're not going out for beers. Just because us in the division are friends doesn't mean everybody's friends. And I mean that's very true to real life, and that happens. And yeah, it sucks being left out, but at the same time, you really don't want to try and hang out with people who don't want to hang out with you anyway. I've had to learn that one the hard way, and I'm now content to just live my life happily with whatever friends want to be around me, and those who don't, okay. So I'm not hurt by it. I get it. I'm an acquired taste for like 2 people in the entire world, and that's fine. Oh wait, you guys too, so that's like 2.5.
Well, in theory, your wife as well, but,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, God have mercy on her soul for putting up with me. Otherwise, any final thoughts for Slow Horses? I mean, I know we're kind of breezing through it a little bit, but I have a feeling our next segment is probably going to be taking up the bulk of our time tonight.
Yeah, for sure. As for Slow Horses and Slough House, I'm just excited to keep seeing where this is going. Like, I feel like it's a very, like, every episode ends not necessarily on a cliffhanger, but definitely leaving me wanting more. And that's what I'm really starting to notice about Apple. Like, I feel like they caught onto the binge formula and then just put it on that week-to-week basis, because whether you can or can't binge it, you're going to want to watch it.
Yeah.
And keep watching.
And I'll follow up, too. You make an interesting point referencing 24. 24 is actually one of the shows that contributed to our current this style of storytelling, this continuous every granted that was more extreme and zeroed in on every hour of the day, but that's the type of that's where we're at now, though. Like, we have shows that are serialized more and more in depth. Like, you can't really watch a show without watching the whole show, and I think it works for a lot of the formula. I do think, though, there is a place for the half serialized, half episodic. That's kind of what Star Trek Deep Space Nine was, and I think it would be nice to kind of be able to get back to that, because what I like about DS9 is that I can reference a couple of episodes that are standalone, and you can go watch them, and you don't necessarily have to commit to the whole series right away. I mean, eventually you might, because it's good. However, it is nice and refreshing to have a show that's like, because I've been thinking about it a lot lately as shows become more serialized, and they're basically like 10-hour movies now. And I'm going, I kind of miss the simplicity of picking a show to watch and being able to not worry about whether or not I have to commit to the rest of it. And so with shows like this and with Severance, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'll probably watch them again years later, but they're not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to see what's on the television. It's like, oh, wow, Slow Horses, Severance, 24, these are great shows if I need to be laid up in bed for a long period of time. But don't get me wrong, and don't misunderstand. It's good to have them. I'm not saying they're bad, I'm not saying it's wrong to do this type of storytelling. I just think it's going to get to a point where we may see a shift back towards more episodic storytelling, and I kind of would like it for the variety, too. So then I could feel like, okay, I'm enjoying a show not just because it's on and it's the trending thing, but I can also decide to pace myself when I want. That's why me personally, and this only applies to myself, I don't binge watch often, if ever, for the simple fact that I like to enjoy the ride, which is why I'm glad we do that, which is the whole reason we do this show, so we can enjoy the ride and talk about it. But
yeah, when I'm watching a show, it depends on what I'm watching it for. If I'm watching it for fun, I'll just watch the show, like maybe an episode or two, and then I'll take a break. I'll go do something. I'll watch another episode or whatever. When I'm watching a show critically, I have to like rewatch the episode like 2 or 3 times and take notes and see what I missed throughout and really pay attention to detail. So for me, if I'm watching something like this, it's a lot harder to watch a serialized story where you have to go back and watch the same episode 2 or 3 times for that binge model. But if I'm casually watching, I don't mind a binge model occasionally. I've learned that if I limit myself to like 2 or 3 episodes a night and spread it out personally, as opposed to like, hey, if Amazon, say for example, were to drop all of the Expanse season in one shot, I'm not going to sit down and watch the whole thing in one day. I'm going to watch 2 or 3 episodes a day and space it out. If only for my own personal enjoyment so that I can appreciate the nuance. When I'm watching something critically, though, like I said, I have to watch it 2 or 3 times, and that's just impossible to binge for me then.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, because when you're trying to put a critique, I mean, with shows that do that, I mean, we could definitely set up a formula for that and do that if, well, I shouldn't say if, it's more of a when we get to a show that we decide to do that drops all the episodes at once. However, it's like, it seems like Netflix was doing something with that and started that trend, but I do like that other companies kind of caught on and were like, well, there was something special about being able to have water cooler talk, you know? And it wasn't all, 30 hours of these people's lives bombarded at you at once. It was spread out over time. You had a week to hit up the boys at the office or wherever you meet your friends to talk about stuff. I guess Twitter too. But we got to have conversations, and that's one of the motivations for this show, is so we can have these discussions just like that, so we can talk about it every week, and we can go, yeah, we like this happening, we think this is going to happen. It's all part of sharing the experience that I think was lost with binging. But that said, there are certain shows that do kind of need it. I think with the Daredevil formula, it worked well because that show took place over the course of like a couple of days, and so I don't know. I think there's something to be said for dripping it one episode a week, or maybe like 2 episodes a week if you really want to get the story out there fast. There's definitely ways to do it. But I think we've said all that we need to say on Slow Horses. It's time to move to the rest of the show with, 2 minutes of Lego Star Wars at the end. And with that, we're going to shift to we're a little behind on this, but at the same time, the Batman dropped on HBO Max, which gave some of us that didn't get a chance to see it in the theater the opportunity to actually sit down and watch it and enjoy it. I'm kind of glad I didn't go to the theater for this one, mainly because it's 3 hours long, and I do enjoy the aspect of watching a blockbuster movie in my jammies. So, Coraon, I don't think I've actually heard any of your thoughts on this movie yet, and so okay. I am ready for you.
Okay, so I did watch this in the theater, which, let me tell you, when you buy an extra large soda and you watch it in the theater, get ready, you're in for a wild ride. It's more of a challenge at that point. That being said, I did make it all the way through it. I'm kind of good friends with the guy who owns a theater near me, so he let me, do my critique thing where I can sit there with, a pad and paper and write while I'm watching it. And this is, I think, the first time I can recall a Batman movie where Gotham itself felt like a character in the show. I will also say that this is probably the most detective Batman we have ever seen. So I did like those things about it. I really liked when Batman was being a detective. I felt that felt realistic and genuine and good. The core concept of the plot elements that they took from some of Batman's greatest comic book stories absolutely were fantastic. It had me guessing the whole time whether we were seeing the Riddler, whether we were seeing Hush, what we were actually getting to. That was fantastic. I felt the runtime was actually justified. It was long, but the movie needed time to build scenes, and you couldn't tell this story any quicker, I don't think, if you were determined to tell this story. So I did like that. I felt that some of the actors were criminally underutilized. The Penguin, criminally underutilized.
I see what you did there.
Thanks. There were some great points. There were some great characters there. I think this is the first time on screen we have seen a black Commissioner Gordon, and he was perfect in the role.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely nailed it. I can see why they casted him, and I 100% agree with the casting. Worked out great. I felt like Andy Serkis as Alfred missed the mark for me. I just didn't buy him as Alfred. But then I've seen Alfred written that way in the comics. They're not my favorite episodes of the comics, but I can see where they took the inspiration from. I can see where Andy Serkis took his inspiration from. So I get it. I understand it. Things I didn't like though. I am a big Batmobile person. Okay. For me, the car is one of the most important parts of Batman. And I despised this car.
Ooh, those fighting words.
You know what?
Continue. I'm just interjecting my little commentary in your commentary. We'll fight about it here soon enough.
Yeah, and I get that it's personal preference, and I respect people's personal preference on that. But for me, if you're gonna take what looks like a friggin' Trans Am and throw a rocket in the back of it, that looks like something from MythBusters. It doesn't look like something from Batman. That's my feeling on it. There were a couple of lines that got very social justice-y that really pulled me out of the movie. They made me kind of stop and go, I'm in a movie theater being lectured at. I'm no longer, along for the ride on this mystery. So I feel like those were missteps personally. I get that it's modern Hollywood. You got to throw in a little bit of identity politics. You got to throw in a lot of blaming the rich white guy. But it didn't fit here well. It didn't feel organic to me. It felt quite the opposite, and it was very jarring, and it kicked me out of the movie. So those were things I wasn't particularly a fan of. I also really didn't like the bat suit. He looks like he's got toaster elements on the sides on his gauntlets there. And I also noticed that anytime he pulls out a tool, he never pulls it out of his belt, he pulls it out of his sleeve. His gauntlets have all the toys on them. And it started driving me crazy. I'm like, what the hell is he hiding all this stuff on his sleeve when he has a perfectly good utility belt right there and we can see it? So my issues are more about those sort of things than about the overarching plot and the overarching concept. I feel like they definitely have built something that could go somewhere. If they do a sequel, I feel like it could work very well. I would really love to see the sequel from Commissioner Gordon's perspective, where the Batman character is the supporter to Commissioner Gordon trying to get the answers. I think that would be a very fascinating way to take it. And that would give us an opportunity to see more of this character that they've introduced us to of Gotham itself. I also think that, you want a really good example of how to do cinema well. The opening sequence where they're showing crimes going on in Gotham, and the criminals suddenly, see a shadow that they think might have moved, and suddenly go, you know what? No, it's not worth it. This is terrifying. I'm out. I'm giving up. I'm going home tonight because that could be Batman. That was absolutely perfect. I do feel that Robert Pattinson was not. See, okay, I've got this theory that whenever they cast somebody as Batman or Bruce Wayne, they're either a really good Batman or a really good Bruce Wayne. They're not both. Robert Pattinson was a fairly acceptable Batman despite not being as buff as previous Batmans. But he looked like he was a meth addict as Bruce Wayne. And I didn't appreciate that. He just looked too meth head and sad to be the billionaire playboy that is Bruce Wayne. So I get that they're doing it as year 2, but year 2 in the comic books, he was the billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne. So you either have it one way or you have it the other. And like I said, I feel like that was just a misstep, but overall I did enjoy the movie.
Yeah, I'll definitely share my thoughts in a bit, but John, why don't you go ahead and share your thoughts on the Batman?
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump off of Coraon's dislikes because a couple of them were actually some of the things that I liked and kind of saw as world building.
Okay.
Like you brought up the social justice warrior points that felt like they pulled you out of the world. For me, I've gotten good at glossing over that kind of content, but when I was watching, and I watched it twice, once and a half, because it's 3 hours, but I was watching it with my younger brother, and I was being more analytical on it on the second one, and because he kept bringing up a lot of good points saying about how much this one sets itself up for the second one. And I think the points you just made about Batman looking like a meth head, and like all correct. I'm not saying that those things didn't happen. I'm saying that they were actually potentially more towards the like setup for the second one, because what my brother brought up was that we got a really good Batman and a really bad Bruce Wayne, but the whole time we were seeing Batman realize the importance of Bruce Wayne in his life. Like for the longest time, like I think this one really showed Batman as like Bruce Wayne is Batman's alter ego, and a lot of the other ones, Batman is Bruce Wayne's alter ego, right? And so for once we're seeing like how Batman could be created and how somebody could literally dress up like a bat, feel like it's a good idea every night. And the like social justice warrior comments, while they were like too long and drawn out, I feel like they were more like calling out Bruce, like, hey Bruce, it's time for you to play the game too. Like, you need to get in there. You are a billionaire. You supposedly love the city. And, like, obviously nobody knows he's Batman, right? So, like, he thinks he's showing his love for the city. And now these other people are saying, like, well, you're not. And there's a lot more you could do. And so this one really felt like it was defining Batman and giving us room to see, like you just said, an episode 2 that goes more from Commissioner Gordon / Bruce Wayne's perspective, like that world. Like, we know how dark and cool Batman is, and the scenes we'll get him in are going to be fun, but the scenes that this one really set up was that like he needs to work on his Bruce Wayne persona. Like, it is broken. It is a meth head looking guy. Like, you are putting too much emphasis on the bat and not enough emphasis on like spending your money efficiently. And that was like Alfred's call outs to him, was like, you are literally being kicked out of your company that you could do more in a single hour with than you could do all night. And I felt like that gave a lot of presence. It just felt like it was more second movie building rather than taking away from the actual story.
Okay, I see your points. I mean, and I think there's a valid thing there. And I think if they're going like a Talia al Ghul story for the second one, then I think everything you said there would be completely justified.
Cool.
All right, and now for my thoughts, of course. Before we get into our comparison and where we rank this Batman, I thought that as far as Batmobiles go, I liked the pony car, supercar aspect. Could it have used more flair? Could it have had a little bit more dressing up to be a proper Batmobile? Yes. For what it was, though, being a little bit of a car and spaceship guy myself, I loved it. I thought it was... I did actually like the simplistic side of it, so I think if you were going to put flair on it, you'd kind of want to be careful with how much flair. But otherwise, I thought the car itself was fine, but I could see how it, okay, it's a pony car, it's a Mustang with a jet engine slapped on it. All right, it is. I'm not gonna fight you on that because but I liked it. I liked it. It that combined with the wingsuit made me appreciate the fact that they were kind of going for even more realism than what the Nolan trilogy did. In just kind of in their own way. So I appreciated a lot of those aspects. I don't think they were entirely necessary to go that realistic. However, it was still cool to see them do that, though. To have Batman actually use a wingsuit instead of his cape. Because it was like, well, while Nolan had a pretty good explanation of how the cape works, it was still fantasy, more or less. This was like, oh yeah, he put on a wingsuit. Now, of course, he landed perfectly without a parachute. That's pushing it. And getting blown up in the face with no damage was also a bit of an oversight that they should not have done. That was a bad mistake. But those are only really the small things that I have an issue with, because the movie itself I thought was good. I definitely rank it up there high, and like I said, we'll definitely go over that. Commissioner Gordon, fantastic performance. It was literally I didn't even care that he looked a little bit differently than the Gordon we're used to, because this is one of those situations where race swapping is perfectly fine, because Jeffrey Wright captured the essence of the character. He was Gordon. I was like, yeah, that's Commissioner Gordon. There's no doubt in my mind. He fit the role perfectly. I really love those scenes. You mentioned doing more detective work. We'll get into that in a bit. I did like it, don't get me wrong. Nothing bad to say there. It's just, I also really like those scenes where they were finally sitting there deducing the situation with each other, though. When they're having that back and forth off each other, I'm like, yes, okay, that is one of the kind of... that's the chemistry that the Nolan trilogy kind of missed, in my opinion. And so, to see them just interacting the way they did, deducing things and figuring stuff out, I thought that was perfect in the way that they executed it, and the scenes were acted well. So, yeah, I give this movie high praise overall. Now, the controversial stuff that you brought up. While your criticism is understandable and valid, and I get it, you go to a movie like this to watch a movie. You're not there to get a lecture on social politics. And if it is going to be a lecture on social politics, you definitely want to go about it a little bit better. And I think that's kind of what they thought they were doing. It just didn't come out right. Because if you listen to the line that she specifically says, it's not privileged white people that she's mad at. It's specifically privileged white guys that are running the town, essentially. Now, I know it seems controversial, and it is to say that, but according to Investopedia, we'll just go through a list here, and we're just looking at this analytically and logically, not trying to make a point, one way or the other. All right, top 10 richest people in the world. Elon Musk, South African, technically white. Jeff Bezos, who's probably the richest of them all, I think, still, because of Amazon.
Yep.
Bernard Arnault, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Steve Ballmer, Larry Ellison, and I don't see a picture of this person named, who I'm not familiar with. Oh, Gautam Adani, supposedly from India. I'm going to have to look into that. So that's 9 out of 10. So the way that they said it, I don't think it was meant to be a racial thing so much as it was just a simple pointing of fact. Now, could it have been said better? Could it have been executed better? Absolutely. I'm not going to fight you on that. However, I found that they weren't saying, oh, white privilege. They weren't going that route. It was specifically saying, rich, white, privileged guys. So I give them a little credit with that. They were trying to specifically focus on who the problem causers were, which typically is those people with lots of money and power that are pulling strings. But just went through it. That's all I was just doing was a analytical assessment according to Investopedia.
Yeah. And look, to be perfectly honest, we can disagree about a scene and still recognize the logical points that both of us are making. And I think that's really the best part about a stream like this, is that, we can have a good discourse about this, right? And a genuine one, too.
And that's what we're about here, is we're about discussing the information, we're about having respect for our discourse, whether or not, and me personally, I don't like to get too much into the politics stuff, mainly because I can't control anything outside my front door. So, why get worked up over it? Why lose friendships over something like that? If I lose friendships over a disagreement over something like Batman, I can sleep with that. That's fine.
Well, I mean, if we're going to have a disagreement over Batman, it should be that, we feel, something like Bruce Wayne is more important than Batman or something crazy like that. Or some specific, or one of us feels that, Robin
George Clooney's Batman's the best Batman.
Yeah, if we're going to disagree about something
Nipple
like that.
suit or nah.
Right, exactly. That is a reasonable argument to throw up flip a table over, as far as I'm concerned.
I just want one question. I want to know why George Clooney's Batman got nipples, but Batgirl didn't. That doesn't seem fair. Just saying.
Equality, should be a more important thing, I guess, right? I would definitely
one of those Andy from The Office situations. George Clooney's nipples just chafed in his suit. He's the only one to complain about it.
Maybe. Personally, I would love to see a re-edit with, equality of bat nipple throughout the entire movie. I think it would make for a much, much better movie, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, like I said, there's certain execution with
Purely in
certain
the
lines.
interest of equality, of course.
Yeah. Certain execution of lines definitely could have been better overall, but I don't think it strayed too far off the message. And like I said, I think they were trying to just point out to, oh no, it's the guys who control Gotham that are rich and just happen to be white. And that's the point I was making with my list, was like, if you look at it, some of the most powerful people, the richest people in the world, not necessarily powerful, because there is a difference, they do just happen to be white. So it's not like it was completely off base to say it in that way either. And that's the only point I was just trying to make. Was that it actually was and that's why I give him credit for it, because it was actually a thought out line. It wasn't just, my white people bad, which I agree is not a road we want to go down. We don't want to go down that with any ethnic background. We don't want to try and typecast in other people like that by making them less than. So I do agree with the cautionary tale about it. However, in this instance, it was specific, and so that's where I'm, as a writer myself, I'm saying, hey, good try. Maybe try it a little better, but I'm not offended. So, any other thoughts on Dark Knight before we argue best Batman?
Oh, or you mean the Batman, or
Right,
do we
the
want to talk
Batman,
about Dark?
before we discuss the
yeah.
Dark Knight? This is what happens when I go unscripted all the time.
Fair enough. I guess the only other piece of the puzzle I would say is, I think it's quite possible that they're going to get a sequel, and if they do, if they do, I would really encourage them to, like, I know they end credits and kind of the deleted scene stuff was dealing more with the Joker. I would really encourage them to shy away from that and go in a completely different direction. Look, I think we can all agree that the best depiction of the Joker is, has so far that we've seen in movies. We've gotten some really, really good ones. We've gotten some really poor ones too. But I think staying away from that, at least for now, maybe have him still in Arkham building up a crew for like a big capstone movie at the end of when you decide to end the arc would be a better fit for him. What I would recommend is take it in the direction of Talia, right? Take it into the direction of Ra's, because Ra's has never really been done really, really well on screen yet, right? I would even argue you could take it in like a Mr. Freeze direction, because we've gotten a very cheesy Arnold Schwarzenegger Mr. Freeze, but we haven't gotten the tragic Mr. Freeze from like the Batman the Animated Series, which I feel like is criminally, hasn't been done and really should be. Like, take us there. Take us to places where the villains that we're going to be seeing are lesser known, lesser well done characters, but really deserve like a good, gritty treatment, for lack of a better term.
A ton of characters that like follow the message in the grand scheme, especially in terms of like what the media talked about cultural movements are, right? So like global warming, you have Poison Ivy. Like her whole shtick is that she was a climatologist of some kind, or a botanist, and then she messed with a rare plant that like gave her power over nature. And like even in the Arkham games, she does a ton of like interesting things that like even Batman is like, well, yeah, you're killing people, or you're ruining people's property, but also like I understand that you really care about the environment. You're just going about it in a completely wrong way. And she's like, well, I am super, so I'm gonna do it whatever way I want. And he's like, well, then I'm gonna arrest you for it. But he wasn't like, oh, you're a terrible person for thinking that. Like, there was a whole dialogue in the Arkham game about it, and he's like, yeah, I get it, but you're just doing it wrong. And like, she didn't change her mind, but that was a whole on the message moment that worked and flowed with the story already because they were in cahoots for a time. And I think that would be something phenomenal to put into a new Batman that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, like you can believe quite convincingly that Batman would have no problem with her if she was like regrowing sections of the Amazon, or revitalizing a national park that had been destroyed by a forest fire. Or
Bruce
something
Wayne
like that.
would pay her to go just take his plane to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you could legitimately see like that's an anti-hero, like a female villain turned anti-hero turned, I guess, just a wizard. She gets to go out and take care of nature because that's what she's most attuned with, right?
Yeah.
And
Just,
that would be a fun story trope.
yeah. Or even, using her plants to potentially, grow rare and exotic herbs that could, produce medicines to heal people. Like, there are that's the tragedy of Poison Ivy, is that she could be doing so much good, but she's just
beaten.
Yeah. Another good one would be Killer Croc. If you did a story about Killer Croc being this outsider his whole life, and that he never really wanted to be a bad guy, he just got pushed into it because of his looks, you could completely do an amazing on-message, quasi-political movie with that, where, the Bat kind of feels bad for having to bring him down because, he is behaving like a monster, but he's only behaving like a monster because people have pushed him to that. So the question of that movie could become, who really is the monster here?
And that, I feel like that would even set up for an even more interesting Joker. Because when you do bring him in later down the road, you bring in a Joker who's just giving those people a place like that feels like home, right? Just giving them a home. He's accepting them when everybody else would. And that explains why they decide to actually maintain their villainy. Because, like, that is even more on message, right? The jail system doesn't work, right? The prison system is turning more people into more prisoners and just throwing them away. And I think that's just, it all stacks, right? And now we have a human, like a realistic Batman with a realistic villain army, that this is why Batman exists and is necessary. But it all follows on message without constantly having to tell us that there's a message.
Yeah,
like that would be awesome.
I think, I hate to give Suicide Squad any credit, but I think killing off the Joker was actually a smart thing to do. And really, if you're going to have Joker in this series at all, he, at this point, needs to kind of be relegated to, like, the background overall. He can't, at least for a while. I think between Phoenix's performance in the Joker movie and obviously Ledger in The Dark Knight, I think the Joker's been done at this point for the next 10 years. I don't think there's really anything to be explored with that character anymore. And, of course, honorable mention, Mark Hamill's Joker in the animated series and also the Arkham games. It's two separate Jokers played by the same guy. Two very different Jokers, at least from what I've observed studying the Arkham games. I haven't played them yet. I know, heresy. However, I do recognize that, I do feel strongly that it's time to just kind of let the Joker be for a while. I don't think it can be done any differently at this point. Now, I'm open to being surprised, don't get me wrong, but I do agree that doing the Joker in the next movie is not the play. I think the next movie, it should be any of the other villains that you mentioned. Giving Ra's al Ghul a proper treatment, I think, would be good. I mean, I felt his treatment was fine in Batman Begins, but I was expecting to see him show up in Dark Knight. Or even Dark Knight Rises, which he sort of pseudo-did.
Yeah, but they really did tell you dirty in Dark Knight Rises. I mean, we've earned watching Talia and Bruce's romance play out.
Yeah. So, unfortunately for the viewers, we're not going to have any visual aids. YouTube, for whatever reason, gave us another copyright infringement for showing a trailer. Which,
And
if that happens
providing
again,
commentary.
we're probably just going to abandon YouTube altogether. Not that I want to, because I know that's an easier platform for a lot of other people who watch this type of content, but it's getting harder to do visuals. Anyway, with that said, however, we will go ahead and continue on. Probably just have to rely on stills like we did when we started this show. We will go ahead and move on to our comparison. In my opinion, I just watched it recently. Dark Knight is still king. And not just king of Batmans, it's still king of capes as well. There has never been a cape movie that has been able to successfully actually... And the metric that I use to judge that is the fact that most people who don't even care for superheroes will still praise the Dark Knight. I have talked to people that are like, yeah, I don't care for that cape shit, but man, that Dark Knight's really good. And it's like, yeah, it is. But it's not good because it's a cape movie. It's good because, yes, it's a great Batman movie. It's a great story. It's just, man, I was getting excited for scenes that I had seen so many times when the movie first came out. I was still quoting lines. I was still like, this movie has aged incredibly well for being over, let's see, we're 2022, so 14 years now. That is amazing, and it's timeless. I didn't feel like any of the things that he was doing was dated. I felt like it was still very much relevant to today, and it's actually even more so to today. The character of the Joker in that film is so, and some people say that, oh, you know, it's not that great because the Joker's plan doesn't make any sense, right? Watching it this time around, and I think maybe the Batman helped to elevate the movie, believe it or not. Watching it this time around, I realized the Joker didn't have a plan. The whole time, the Joker was planning on dying or being in prison. There was, most of the other stuff that he had happen was because he was working directly with the mob, but we don't see that interaction as much because it happens off camera. But when you rewatch the movie, Nolan's writing is so good that the Dark Knight is 2.5 hours of literary bliss, in my opinion, because it's solid. Every angle is covered. The Nolans, when they wrote it, did a great job of making sure that they had everything that they wanted to say clearly without, having to go to the extremes of saying blunt lines like in the Batman. And so, yes, it still holds up for me. It's still the king. But here's where the Batman did better for me. The score. Giacchino definitely beat Hans Zimmer and made a more iconic and memorable Batman soundtrack. While I do feel that the Hans Zimmer soundtrack does a good job to keep the tone of The Dark Knight, let's not kid ourselves here. It's fine, it's passable, but it's also done it, done, and then we have some of the Inception, in there too, which is his style, and it works. Giacchino, I still have the theme in my head. I can reference it right now. It was really well done, and I think that was one of the Batman's strongest points. So it definitely beat it there. The Batmobile I liked more. I felt was actually more practical, slapping a jet engine on a pony car versus the Tumbler. I like the practical functions of the Tumbler, but from a design perspective for full-time use like that, it just doesn't work. It's too big. So it gets a little clunky. It's a little ridiculous. I liked what they were trying to do. Again, Nolan's really good about trying to make Batman plausible. But I think with that, we could have done a bit of a better design on the Batmobile in the long. Go ahead.
Just to comment on that, I feel like Nolan should have just slapped a rocket to a G-Wagon.
Right, or just somebody just lift the animated series Batmobile already. I mean, the Batman felt like the animated series brought to life.
Like I've seen those made somewhere before. Like somebody's remade a real one.
There's actually a dude who lives 50 kilometers or about 25 miles from my place that actually has a Batmobile. He dresses up as Batman and goes to the hospitals in the area, but he drives a legit Batmobile.
That is so
I'll drink my water to that. Good for you, man. Thanks for making a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And being so
yeah,
cool.
That's my, but that's, so, yeah, going back to what I was saying, the things that did better. Both Gary Oldman and Jeffrey Wright are Commissioner Gordon. Both of their performances were solid, so I think they're both tied in their respective roles in those movies. They both, but then that's the thing with Commissioner Gordon. That's a character type that's very specific. Batman, you can be a little bit more fluid with. You can take it different directions. I did like Pattinson's Batman, though I will agree, Coraon. Bales was definitely way better dressed. I did, however, find in some elements of Pattinson's performance as Batman to be a little bit better than Bales, for the simple fact that he was more just quiet and stern, but I could still hear him. He was talking very sternly but quietly. Whereas Batman has throat cancer when it's Christian Bale. And so, yeah, I felt that Bale's growling was a little heavy at times, whereas Pattinson's came off that more calculated. Now, they say that the Batman, you guys praise it heavily for the proper detective work. Okay, I will admit that, yes, it does have more focus on the detective work. It does treat Batman as more of an equal on the police force, whereas in The Dark Knight, he's made to be the villain for a very good reason. But he still did detective work in The Dark Knight, too. When he did all the bullet analytics, I felt that both films did a very good job of Detective Batman. However, yes, there was more, because we have a younger Batman for the Batman. There was more emphasis on it. There was more time spent on it, whereas Nolan went with the, it's time for a montage approach. Whereas,
well, I think,
go ahead.
I think that the big difference is that the stuff we saw Batman Christian Bale doing was forensic, like lab type shit. Like he was being true. In the CSI, right? Crime
CSI lab. Gotham. Yeah,
CSI Gotham. Whereas what Robert Pattinson was doing was way more like, oh, there's a riddle. Like he was saying, or he gave us a riddle, here's the answer, and they're like talking about it like actual like homicide detectives rather than talking about it like crime lab techs.
Very true. And yeah,
I think that's the point. Bigger, like, and that it definitely does matter. Like, detectives don't think of themselves as Christian Bale CSI. They think of themselves as that more on the ground, literally looking at evidence in the moment.
Yeah. I do place the Batman very highly up on the charts, though. It is better than The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, that movie was what it was. I don't know. I would say, would I put it above Batman Begins? Probably, because Batman Begins does have that hitch of being an origin story. It's one of those movies. Begins is kind of one of those films where you watch it once, you only really care to watch the second half going for any time you want to watch it. So it didn't do that. It didn't waste time with the origin story. We know Batman's origins. It just dove right into, here's Batman, this is what he's going to do now. And I liked it for that. Better than Batfleck, obviously. Obviously better than... Now, as far as the Michael Keaton Batman goes, I think I do need to give that one another fair shake, now that I'm a bit older, and kind of see where that one stands overall. I don't think it's, yeah, it definitely gave Dark Knight a run for its money, which I was impressed with, but it didn't quite hit all the marks for me. But Coraon, you came dressed to play today, so why don't you give us your take?
Well, so I will say this: I have, when I rank my Batman, I have a split, because I have the top Batman and I have the top Bruce Wayne, because they are different. I would argue that, I think Robert Pattinson definitely is in contention for the top seat on Batman. But I definitely think that Ben Affleck was by far the superior Bruce Wayne.
I can agree to that.
Right? I personally think the Tumbler was far superior, the Bat vehicle overall, personally. I feel like if I was going to be a dude that decided to dress up as a bat and take on crime, yo man, I'm gonna want a tank that is street, quasi street legal. I'm gonna want that kind of beefy, scary freaking vehicle as opposed to more of a hot rod look. I want something that people see this thing, and when they see it, they start running in the opposite direction, not realizing that it means they'll only just be arrested tired. That's how I feel about it. I love the Tumbler. My second choice, I think, when it comes to Bat vehicles, is probably the Michael Keaton Batmobile. It was great in its campy, at the time, late 80s, early 90s comic book. That was the Batmobile, and they brought it to life, and it was perfect. Story-wise, I definitely think this is in content. Like, I 100% agree. The Dark Knight is the best Batman overall we've gotten, like, on all points. It is a near perfect movie to me.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to interrupt real quick since we're talking about Batmobiles and I decided to look up the picture because I couldn't remember. Okay, yes, Keaton's Batmobile is still the king. I will have to say that, in my opinion, because it also did have functionality, but it is also, it's lifted from the comics, but it looks like something that I would drive to the grocery store, if I'm being honest. So...
Dude, you drive that to the grocery store, you are going to get noticed.
Yeah. Well, I used to drive a ZL1 Camaro, nothing I'm not used to. But,
nice.
I just wanted to say that looking at it. I was like, oh, that's right. That one was very close to the to the animated series version, which, like I said, that's the one I'd like to see on screen at this point. But I think for me, it's just the Tumbler was a little too bulky. But I'm going to leave it at that.
Fair. I would say that, it's really hard for me to say that this is... the Batman is in second place. I really feel like it's a tie. I really feel like what we got with the Michael Keaton Batman, the OG Michael Keaton Batman, was in my second place. I feel like this this is just about on par with that. They're just two very different movies, so it's really comparing apples to oranges. You could tell that the Michael Keaton movie was really all about trying to match the film noir Gothic architecture feel of the comic books at that time. Whereas, look, the Batman, Robert Pattinson's Batman, did something no other Batman has ever done, and it made Gotham a character, and that is huge to me. My issue is just some of the other glaring stuff that keeps it from being, certifiably the number 2 slot. I feel like it's a really, really tight tie with the original Batman. And then, in a distant fourth, I think is probably Batman and Robin. That's a pretty fair. Distant fourth. I would also say this, that I think Ben Affleck, if he had better writers, could have been an absolutely amazing Batman. He just had terrible writing for his 2 movies.
Fair. All right, John, what's your opinion on the Batman versus the Dark Knight?
Well, I feel like versus the Dark Knight, I feel like we just got 2 completely different Batmans. The biggest difference is that one of them is not really fully human, whereas the other one is trying to pull out. Like, throughout the whole Dark Knight, we constantly see Bruce Wayne trying to leave, right? Like, to hang the cape up, he's positioning Harvey, trying to help Harvey. So we got this older, more mature Batman dealing with a just crazy threat. Whereas Pattinson's Batman was much younger, much more just used to being a brawler, just used to going straight at it head first. He's got like 80% of the information, good enough, I'm going in. And I think that makes for two dynamically different movies, especially the roles that were played. So we had the Joker, who's broadcasting terror, whereas we have the Riddler, who's broadcasting individual justice. And I think that the two stories really diverge in that instance, where like the Joker isn't claiming to be a just person, he's just threatening the whole city, whereas the Riddler is like painting the world as he sees it. And the worst part is like most of the people kind of sort of agree with him. Like he's not actually wrong when he talks about the commissioners, the two people that he killed. He's not actually wrong when he says no, they were dirty, they were on the payroll, they were the reason why drugs are still ruining our city. It's just his execution was, that's not what you're supposed to do, right? Like instead of collecting all this data and actually holding a trial and having people taken to jail, instead he doesn't trust them because the people that he would take him to trial. And I feel like that all plays for a wholly different story, whereas the Dark Knight is very much a story about combating evil with just a little bit under evil. Batman's not afraid to do anything that's abrasive in the Dark Knight. But he's also like, I feel like there's that whole message so bent on I'll never kill. Like if that's your one thing, you should probably have like 10 or 15 other fake things so that nobody's like constantly pushing you to that edge of it's kill or let somebody else die. And it just felt a little bit, especially now, watching it now, it felt more forced in comparison. And that's more just in comparison. Whereas like this Batman, or the new Batman, it felt like Robert Pattinson's character was getting all these lectures and he gave everybody the exact same face back. Like, I'm thinking about other things that have nothing to do with what you're talking about. And he just kept not changing. And I felt that felt more human. Whereas Bruce is having these really philosophical debates with Alfred and, becoming a better person throughout the entire movie that's only spanning 48 hours to a week. And I feel like that's it's one of the benefits of these like new movies, where writers aren't always going to let the main character change entirely. And that's, I don't know, I don't have a tier system like you guys do. I don't have a 1 to 10. I don't even remember all of the Batman movies. I definitely like Ben Affleck's Batman. I feel like in the director's cuts of both of his movies, he was much better portrayed as a hardened leader. Anytime anybody like rebuffed him, he just he didn't break. He never broke stoicism. Even when he was Bruce Wayne, he was still maintained his stoic nature, and that felt like what the mature Batman that he's supposed to be. Like the Batman of the Justice League is always this is how we do it right. And then everybody goes, yeah, but there's other ways. And he's like, no, this is the only right way. And it's going to suck, but it's the only way. And then the whole series is about them being like trying all the other ways until they finally go, okay, Batman was right. And now they do it the hard way, but it's the right way. And that's really more what I felt Ben Affleck's character was. But so as far as that's about I would wrap that up.
Yeah, I would say that Ben Affleck's Batman or any Justice League Batman. Look, in the Justice League, Batman is the moral compass in the Justice League, which is amusing given that it is a league that has Superman in it. But no, Batman is actually the moral compass here. And I always find that fascinating.
I love that though, because Superman never represents himself as the moral compass of the world. The people say he is, but he's just like I really feel like Superman is Batman's humility incarnate. Like, Batman has all of the intellect that Superman has the strength, and Batman has all the money, all the ability to let his pride and ego make him become a dictator, but then there's Superman constantly sitting over his shoulder, acting as like his hubris enforcer, right? And then Superman never wants to be worshipped, because like the way he grew up was that like you do good for good. You don't do it for money, you don't do it for face, you don't ultimately do good for a better plan. You just do good because you can. And that's where his role has always been in the series, is like, where can I do the most good? Batman, tell me where to go. And that's why I think that dynamic works so well.
Well, I mean, when you take a look at, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, right? And you take a look at the original Superman creed of truth, justice, and the American way. Look, Batman is justice, right? You take Wonder Woman is truth.
Yeah.
And Superman is the American way, which is kind of splitting the difference between the two, right? Like, that's kind of the interesting dynamic those three have. And even when you just look at Batman and Superman, I mean, you literally have like the sun and the moon, right? You got the rational and the passionate. They're both working to the same ends. They just have dramatically different ways of getting there.
Yeah, and I remember reading on Snyder's original intent for the Superman versus Batman story that was supposed to, create the Justice League. And his whole depiction was the two American approaches to 9/11. He was separating that Superman was this like rah, America support your troops, get the good, like save who you can save, but get it done. And then Batman was the actual troops getting the job done. Like, we have to fight this world to protect this world. And the paradigm he was trying to, I guess, like show was like, what if those two ideals meet at the head of like in battle? And I always get frustrated with people getting mad at kryptonite just being this like goofy rock that can just melt Superman. If it was going to be any rock from Krypton, it would be some version of Kryptonian uranium. So like the reason he's melting is because its isotope is messing with his skin. At like the same way uranium-231 or 235 actually reacts to humans. That's why you can't touch it, right? Like that's what frustrates me, is that like people mess with kryptonite like it's just a green rock, and it's like, yeah, technically, but like if we're gonna say a man can fly, then let's at least say that the agent he's being poisoned by is a radioactive mineral that hurts Kryptonians specifically.
Yeah.
I've never.
Yeah, I mean, definitely lots of good discussion there. Getting in kind of into the Justice League and whatnot, but I mean, it's all Batman. It's all relevant, so it's all
That's
good.
who Batman becomes.
Well, and yeah, I think when it comes to the Justice League right now, I think we need to get that kind of sorted out to get it on a good level. I know the Snyder Cut came out, and that was a big deal. I still haven't made the time to watch it yet, but
you're cheating yourself, dude.
Yeah, you're missing out. Everything is fixed in the Snyder Cut.
I will definitely get around to it. And I will say this, though, for Batfleck, I did like a more practical Batman in the sense that he wasn't afraid to kill when it was necessary. I think it could have been a little bit better executed overall, but it definitely kind of made more sense. And I used to think that, that was the big fantasy of Nolan's Dark Knight, was that, he never kills anybody. I watched it again and I realized I was wrong. Batman does break his rule in the Dark Knight. At the very end.
Killed Dent.
He killed Dent. And that never clicked with me because I always saw it as a circumstantial type of situation where he was just trying to save Gordon's kid. And I realized he did it by shoving him off the edge and killing him. Oh, he did break his rule. So the Joker was right. He did have to go that far. And that's just it. It's that whole idea behind where, yes, heroes only kill when they absolutely have to, but that's the unfortunate side of life, is that you might be presented with a circumstance where you're not going to have a choice. You're not going to have that luxury to stick to your morals. And if you do, it may come at a high cost to yourself. Not necessarily just your own life, but someone you might care about. And that's why Batman did what he did, because he was like, he wasn't going to let Gordon's son or his family suffer the Joker's game. And so he sacrificed his morals to save the life of Gordon's kid. And I think that's a lot of what gets missed in the Justice League and the Batman that we're kind of supposed to get. That's why I agree that, yeah, he's Affleck's Bruce Wayne is definitely really good. And Pattinson's Bruce Wayne was a lot weaker, so I can agree to that. I think it's just the thing about Bale's Batman was that I think he had the best balance between the two. Shifting between them was very seamless for him. And so while I don't much care for the style of dialogue, and I did like Pattinson's softer touch, he did a better job of transitioning. Whereas, yes, it felt like when he was Bruce Wayne, he was, emo teenager mode, and we definitely needed some improvement on that. But you're right. When it came to being Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck he was Bruce Wayne. He was very good at it, very, very straightforward. I even liked in Batman v Superman, there were a lot of elements of that movie I did enjoy, but ultimately upon rewatches, I was like, yeah, it's not that great in the long run. But I did like the honesty of it though, and I thought that Jeremy Irons did a great job as Alfred in that series. And so I thought that there was a lot of good elements there that they just didn't make work, unfortunately. So
did you watch the director's cut or the?
That would be Justice League. No, I'm talking about.
No. There's two director's cut. Both of them, yeah. Batman v Superman had a director's cut because the whole Martha scene. Okay. Yeah, the Martha scene. That actually got changed. It was Warner Brothers seems to play a lot of games with the theatrical releases. I read up a lot on it, and when it comes to this is why I think you should watch the Snyder Cut and don't think of it as just looking for the extra 10 minutes. No, it's a whole different movie. The bad guy's different. The reason the bad guy is on Earth is completely different, thought out, actually a complex dialogue. A lot of the story just flows like a story should. The reason it was cut was purely because some corporate level just wrong. They were wrong because when the Snyder Cut came out, everybody that watched it comparing it to the other one, it was the movie that would have made DC actually stand against Marvel. And because it only released on HBO. It missed.
Well, it did crash their servers when it came out because so many people were determined to watch it. There's something there. Yeah.
Oh, I legitimately was one of the first to watch. I started it 7 minutes late, and I watched it twice that night. It's a great movie. And it is a different movie. Even the people on Wonder Woman's island, they are just the Amazonians. They are way more thought out, way more explained, and just done way more justice. Like, I feel like there's a lot of, we know what viewers like because we went back and checked the top 10 greatest hits list, and we're gonna just change a few like things and we're gonna get it right. And it's like, no, you literally have no idea what anybody likes because you're not asking anybody, you're not listening to the reviews of your movies, and you're just butchering superheroes. Because as soon as the director's cut released for Batman vs Superman as well, it's like an extra, I want to say like an extra 45 minutes of content that, spliced in the right areas, makes it a whole different narrative. And it's like, maybe you should just trust your directors.
Yeah, like, you know how in the theatrical release of Batman vs Superman, there's a lot of Dante's Divine Comedy references when it comes to Lex Luthor. All of those make sense in the extended edition.
Mm-hmm. Everything. Like, it's so dumb because the pieces that they cut out were essential. Because that's what's caused the Martha. Wait, what? Who are you saying Martha to? My mom is Martha. And it's like, no, all he was actually saying was my mom. And like, there's this whole line where Batman says, "Oh, you're crying out for your mom?" And he's like, "No, save my mom." And then that's when Batman goes, "Oh shit." And that's like an actual like revelation moment, like, oh, you really were talking about something earlier before I started attacking you.
He doesn't care about his life at that point. He just cares that he saves his mother. That changes that whole scene in an instant. Like, wow.
Yep.
Well, and Batman has the realization too. It's like, it actually takes the time for Batman to be shocked, like, well, because, like, you know how it starts, like, tell me, do you bleed? And he's like, look, Bruce, I need to talk to you about something else that's way more important. And then Batman's like, I'm going to beat you to death. And then starts laying into him, right? And that's what starts the fight. And then we have him say, well, at least save my mom. Like, I don't care if I die, just save my mom.
All right.
And that's when Bruce realizes he's fighting an actual person.
Good Batman discussion overall, but we do need to move on because we do need to do some plugs before we close out the show. But with that, we are going to move on to the gaming segment. So hopefully our media doesn't get us flagged again. We'll try our visual aid again. But John, you spent some time checking out the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Trilogy game. Why don't you tell us what you thought?
Dude, I play most of my games without sound. The way my setup is, if I want sound, I have to put on my headphones, and that gets really annoying. So I've been playing this game with subtitles only, and that's made it play a lot more like the original Lego Star Wars for me, and it's been a ton of fun. I have played it with the mumble mode turned on. I think I enjoyed that more because I was a child. Because now, like, watching it, it's like, it's pretty childish humor. But then when I turn the actual voice acting and the voices, the jokes are funny, they land. They're like well-timed, and it feels that like everything they wanted to do with this game, they did. It's super convoluted menu system. Like, I feel like they went a little bit too overboard with trying to condense everything into one screen for the like settings and everything, rather than doing multiple splash screens for each. But man, is it fun. Like, it's exactly like the old game in terms of just like, I'm gonna break everything in this room and not fight anybody until I get true Jedi. And nothing pushes you. Nothing's like, no, hurry up, you're missing the game. It's just like if you stand still, it'll start giving you hints. And that's the only time it'll give you hints. It's really nice. It's really fun. I haven't explored enough. I'm trying to beat all of the storylines so I can go back and free play on my own. But it is very entertaining. That video is pretty bad.
Yeah, a little.
I gotta learn how to.
That would have been appreciated.
Yeah, I did
I'll get
not
that
know it was
fixed on
paused
the
for
horse
that
then.
long.
We'll keep going.
But no, it ends up being just a very fun, relaxing game like it used to be. I cannot wait to teach my kid how to play this. It's gonna be just hours of fun because we're a family of video game players, and he'll get there one day.
Awesome.
So, yeah, Coraon, did you get a chance to play it at all, or?
Well, managed to get through a little bit of it. I've been sticking to the prequel and regular, the standard series. I have not touched the sequel trilogy section of the game at all, and probably won't. But the gameplay is fantastic. It's, it tracks as I would say celebration more than a culmination, more of a celebration of the Lego Star Wars games, personally. I think they did a lot more right than they did wrong. The comedy lands. John's absolutely right on I think all of it. I mean, it's probably not something I will play with my daughter because she's more into the strategy and tactics sides of things. Like, this is most definitely a Pokemon house, shall we say. But, this is for sure one of the better games that came out. Now, I'll admit, about 3/4 of the way through my time reviewing this game, I had to dip out because Dune Spice Wars launched on Steam, and it called to me. It bid me take my place. So,
Yeah, and I mean, I did not get it. I have not had a chance to pick this one up yet, but I have played both the first and second Lego Star Wars as well as Lego Force Awakens, and I hated the dialogue. And maybe it's not the same with with this newer one, so I'll probably give it a chance when I get around, because one of the things I loved about Lego Star Wars was how they were able to tell so much and capture so much emotion without saying a word. The scene where Anakin is found to be betraying the Jedi, it hits you in the gut the way that it didn't in the movie. And these are just little Lego guys, and they're expressing their emotion, and you're like, oh, that was actually really well done. I'm impressed. And it's everything from that to the, keeping it limited like that, I think was a huge benefit to the series overall. But then, of course, as time went on and the other Lego games came out, then they had to resort to dialogue. I've been meaning to try Lego Lord of the Rings just to give it a shot. But I do like the simplicity of the Lego games overall. They're not super hard. They're puzzles, light puzzles, and they're fun little Lego worlds, and you get to build your own characters in some of them, and it's good. It's nice to have that as a game, though. Like, not everything needs to be painful, and that's what I like about it is the simplicity of these games. So my main issue with doing dialogue was when in Force Awakens it was so bad. It was so bad that you could hear the voice talent. I think it was Carrie Fisher that followed up with, you could hear Harrison Ford delivering lines of, oh yeah, we need to get these supplies and Wookiee cookies for Chewie. And then there's a moment where even Fisher is embarrassed by the line, because she even says, when she follows up, she says, and we'll get Wookiee cookies for Chewie. It's almost like you can hear her in the recording studio looking at this line like, are you guys serious with this crap? So it kind of killed the immersion a little bit and the fun of it, because it was like, okay, the dialogue at first was okay, and then I get to that point where it's like, okay, not even your voice talent is excited for this. Just go back to the style for something. But that said, I am open to trying the new trilogy or the new saga, just to see if the dialogue for the prequel and OT trilogy is on point. Would you say that's the case, though, Coraon or John?
I mean, I enjoyed the dialogue from a perspective of, yeah, it was fun and cute and like on brand for Lego Star Wars humor, I guess is the best way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah. I felt like I don't read the subtitles as much because a lot of them just seem to kind of pop up while I'm trying to do something else. But as for like what you were talking about with the whole like, do the scenes describe themselves without sound? That is 100%. Like, because I don't actually turn the sound on for most of my gameplays, like I'm just watching what the game is actually giving me. And it, like in the first video that you showed, it was the opening of episode 6, and it's hilarious. Like, I didn't hear any of the words or anything that's actually going on. I was just watching, and you just watch all the stormtroopers get dominoed.
Good
And I was like, that's like, yeah, so like all the visual storytelling, like they still put that effort into the cutscenes. So if you do want the mumble mode on, you'll still get the full story. And visually it still portrays without actually breaking it. So if that's something that like the dialogue does end up bothering you right out the gate, it's just a single setting. Pretty hard to find at first. I think I actually demonstrated it in this one. But yeah, it's just a really quick setting that you have to change at the beginning of the game, and as soon as you change it, it's all mumbles from there, and it's just like playing back in the day. But it is it's mumbling, and that got old quick, especially when you're spending all your time breaking stuff and not actually doing the main mission. Then everybody's constantly mumbling at you.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, the visual gags are what really sold the Lego Star Wars series for me, is that, yes, it is very much a kid's game in that sense. It's not hard, that's what it's not supposed to be. It's Legos. If you've ever played with Legos, you've realized they're a pretty simple, straightforward building block toy. They are not super complex. Now, that's not to say people haven't done complex things with them, of course. Some of the Lego art that's out there, especially at the various Lego lands, and even just stuff I've seen shared online in certain communities, is impressive. And I especially appreciate that, because as a kid growing up, I mean, John, you and I, we played Legos all the time. I think we spent about 40% of our time playing the sort game, but when we did have our stuff sorted and we could build stuff and we had fun, I definitely clinged more to the art aspect of Legos, personally. You know, I wanted my patterns to match up on ships, and I wanted to make sure that they were sturdy and secure, and whether I was building a base with a bunch of guns on it, or a star fleet of ships, because we had just got the newest Lego released at the store. You know, that's the stuff that I want to... That's the stuff I like. And so, putting those in the game, it was very awesome to kind of have that similar nostalgia even years ago when I first played those games. And so, sounds to me like that magic is still there. Is that what you'd say? So, for veteran Lego Star Wars players, you'd recommend the game?
Oh yeah, you're gonna have a really good time, especially because there's way more open world. I think every planet has its own open world setting. That whole getting lost and just trying to find coins is 1,000% easier. So yeah, you're not playing the old games, and you're also not losing any of the enjoyment of the old games. And that's a first. Usually when somebody tries to, remaster or rebuild something, they cut out all the things we actually enjoyed, and in this case, they made them bigger.
Well,
which is slower, but
yeah,
bigger.
And that's there's nothing wrong with going a little slower, because like I said, one of the draws to the Lego Star Wars game is the simplicity. It is one that you can just, sit down in a controlled and relaxed environment. You're not playing PvP. You're not putting up with kids, 120th kid who's supposedly copulated with your mother. It's just you. It's just the Legos, just like it was, back in the day. And that's what I like about it. Was kind of like playing these games was kind of like reenacting some of those battles that I made. But of course, not exactly the same, because I didn't have half the sets that are showcased. I mean, we had a lot of Legos growing up, but I've still been impressed by some people's collections and various Lego art, as it were. So yeah, any final thoughts, suggestions with Lego Star Wars?
I recommend it. It's got that
Yeah.
couch co-op that I haven't seen in a long time.
Oh yeah.
It's super easy too. You just press A to jump in and press start and quit to drop out again. Doesn't break the story, doesn't do anything to mess anything up. It's really
Oh yeah,
nice.
that was another thing I absolutely loved about the Lego Star Wars mechanic was the simplicity of the co-op play. That you literally had your buddy was always with you, right? There was never a moment where you're alone because whether it's the computer playing it for you or your friend or family member jumping in with you, that I thought was a very that was a mechanic that I still would like to see more of, even in modern games, because of the convenience. And actually, with some games, that there actually is like that, sort of, not exactly. Like Sea of Thieves, for example, is very easy drop in, drop out type of gameplay. But it's also nice because it doesn't really ruin your gameplay that much, because for one, it's easy, but for two, it's like, oh, I'm gonna jump into this real quick, play with you for a couple hours, then I'm jumping out, and it's like, well, I'm here doing, a 12-hour marathon stream of Lego Star Wars. I don't have to. So I'm curious though, is it just couch co-op only right now?
I haven't checked the online settings, but as far as I know, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
I mean,
As far as I'm aware, it's only couch.
Well, that's something we can definitely arrange and possibly make happen as a future idea for a possible casual filth stream playing Lego Star Wars, having long philosophical discussions while playing a Lego Star Wars game. That could actually be a thing, huh?
That could
It's a
be.
relaxing enough game. It's easy enough to play while thinking out loud.
I will suggest this to you guys. Subnautica does have a multiplayer mod. And that could be a lot of fun.
Doesn't that one require VR though?
No. You
Oh.
can play it with the VR.
Okay. Then yeah, we'll definitely look at that. Because yeah, I mean, I've still been meaning to get into Northgard, and I definitely want to eventually get to that. Actually, what I've been playing though a lot of lately is Guild Wars 2. I feel like I should have gotten into that a lot sooner, because I've been blown away by the mechanics of that game. Are impressed. It's actually funny. It's kind of similar to how simplistic Lego Star Wars is. Guild Wars is kind of like a couple of steps above that, especially being an MMO. I'm very surprised at how easy it is to pick up and learn. I don't know if either of you guys have played Guild Wars at all.
Not yet.
I
No.
did back in the day. I'm not sure how much it's changed over the years, though.
Well, and I also like that all I have to do is buy the game, and that's that. There's no subscription. There's no pay to win aspect to it. There's no pay for convenience aspect to it either. It's all mostly seems like cosmetics and mounts and stuff, which I think is a good way to do a game. That's the whole reason I love Star Trek, is because I bought a lifetime subscription back in the day, so I get a little extra store coin. But I don't have to pay anything. I can enjoy that game without having to do it. And that was one of the reasons I bought Guild Wars, was because I don't need a sub right now. So, was there anything you guys are also playing right now, or that you want to talk about?
Yeah, Dune Spice Wars has come out of is now in early access, and it is. I guess the best way to put it is, if you were looking for an experience like the old school Dune RTS, but modernized so that it works and it feels like the RTS we've been clamoring for in the RTS community for the last while. This is it. They've done it. They've brought it back.
Okay.
How do you play that one?
Over Steam.
Oh, okay.
And it feels like there's a lot of aspects of city building, and like army creation, and trying to do it in such a way to create your army that it doesn't really get noticed by the opposing players. A lot of unit choice even for early access, and your nobles have a fairly, from the looks of things so far anyway, have a fairly heavy effect on what your army will do. I could 100% see multiple play styles by focusing on multiple nobles to get different results.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Like, I could 100% see an Atreides playthrough where you're primarily focused on, like, Gurney, and it being a very different army than, say, if you were focused on Paul.
That's
So different
really cool.
scenarios within the original story that you can play out, or like kind of like, yeah, I think you said it.
They haven't
alternate universe.
released... Yeah, they haven't released any of the story elements yet. So I haven't played through the campaign.
Okay.
So far, it's just been the kind of RTS, one-on-one kind of play, or whatever versus whatever you want versus AIs, or I haven't tried the multiplayer yet. I don't know if it's functional yet, but I suspect it's it's going to become a big multiplayer scene.
Well, all right, that's good to know. All right, well, approaching the end of our stream here, we've only got a few minutes left. Coraon, why don't you go ahead and take it real quick? Just a couple minutes to plug your stream. I got your channel up on the background for you in the next screen. And why don't you tell us what it's about, what you're gonna do, what you want to do, and what just a little
Absolutely.
Little plug.
So I've started my own channel. What's going on with it is I'm YouTube's completely unofficial, Witch in Residence. I'm talking about everything from being a witch in the modern world, society, politics, all religions are welcome, pop culture. I give you my perspective on modern myths and compare them to classic mythological stories. I might even decide, depending upon how, what kind of response I get, I might decide to tell my story about how I came into craft and what influenced that. I might even decide to do things like talk about in general, like how to, find a teacher if that is what you're interested in, and what the different communities in the world look like, because the Wicca scene in Toronto is vastly different than a lot of the other places in the world. And I've experienced all of them, and I would love to give you guys a brief tour of the world that is, just slightly underneath the world you might see in the everyday. So definitely feel free to come over. I've got a little bit of my first video is up. It's dealing with a kind of an interesting metaphor to explore the modern world, and I'd love to see you guys all there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I definitely, I have my own personal beliefs on the world, and certainly a lot of that's influenced by my upbringing. But, the thing about our channel, and we'll probably discuss this after the show a little bit, is, like I said, we're about restoring respect into discourse. Not necessarily just even in the time right now where people think that Twitter is real life, but also with just even all throughout human history, there's been this misguided and misplaced idea that just because someone doesn't agree with you, you have to kill them. Now, if you're in a position of power, trying to achieve things, trying to enslave humanity, of course that's what you want. But we don't want that. We are about independently minded, free thinkers deciding for themselves, and since you are bringing a very unique perspective that I am mostly unfamiliar with, that's what we're about promoting on this channel, is the ideas, because you don't have to... We're not putting this out there to say that you have to follow Coraon, as an example. And, of course, our next up plug. If you don't want to listen, that's fine. Where I draw the line, though, is you don't get to decide whether or not Coraon is correct. It's not my place to tell Coraon is wrong. It's not my place to tell Johnny is wrong. It's not anyone's place to tell each other that we're wrong. Unless, we're, like, actually eating babies. That might be a problem.
Yeah, that I think we can all universally agree, no good.
See, and that's just it. With a lot of the preconceived notions of Wicca and a lot of the past rituals, again, if you're not comfortable with it, that's okay. We're not going to force the issue. However, we're also not going to stifle anybody in the process either. That is wrong. I do not care what your ideology is. Silencing someone's voice because you don't agree or because you think you're correct is never okay. And that's part of what we want to end on this show. And that's why, we come from a couple of different backgrounds, and we've had our various histories in life that will probably eventually be known anyway. But but I'm not interested in making my perspective correct. I'm interested in just sharing what I feel is correct, and I'm interested in pursuing what is right. And what is right and being right, very rarely do they actually align. Most of the time, our preconceptions are incorrect. But it sounds like you got a thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the number one thing that I will say is that Wicca is right for me. Just as, the various, both of you have beliefs that are right for you. And that's the important thing. I would never say that my belief system is right for everybody. In fact, I would actively say that it's a hard road to hoe. And it's very different than what most people are exposed to. So I would encourage, if you come to my channel and you watch it, take the questions that I'm asking, take the things I'm showing you, and form your own opinions on it, please. I would love to hear those opinions, and I would love for the friendly, reasonable, but impassioned discourse between members of any belief system to be able to sit down and discuss them like rational and reasonable people, and maybe, who knows, maybe we all learn something from that, and that would be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I've had a lot of my perspectives shaped and changed for the simple fact that I listened, because that's really the real basis of understanding and enlightenment is to just listen, okay? Unless somebody is trying to force you into something, unless somebody is like actively beating their ideas into your head, they're just ideas. You can walk away at any time. You can go live your life freely. I'm not about, like I said, I'm not about forcing my opinions on people, and I certainly wouldn't want anyone to feel that uncomfortable. But this is the thing. There are 7 billion unique personalities out there. Now, I know it doesn't seem like it in times, and I know there's certain aspects of the world that we think that, oh, well, look at all these people living in this area. They all do the same thing. Well, for one, they're allowed to do that. And for two, just because they're doing the same thing now doesn't mean they're always going to do the same thing. But that's a philosophical discussion for another time. I do have one last plug that I need to do before we jump off of the air, but I got to set up a little bit for it just to make sure that everyone can see.
Well, he's setting up. I do recommend you go check out Coraon's channel, and I do recommend you listen for a while. He's got a sweet, soothing voice, and his opinions are fun.
Yeah,
they're interesting.
well, let's just put a little disclaimer out there. There's only one video right now, so I mean, a while is you put the same video on repeat. That's probably not going to work. So there will.
I'm talking to the
people
that are watching this in the future,
and I do hope that eventually, if you do get to streaming, that we can have those philosophical stuff, because I am not opposed to sharing my beliefs, in the right situation.
Absolutely. My plan is I want to bring on people who are most definitely not an echo chamber of me to discuss on the channel. I'd love to have you both on.
Yeah, I would. No. Absolutely. That would be amazing.
We'll definitely make that happen. But turning real quick to our last plug, some of our friends, we've talked about them before. We'll plug them now because they're going to be streaming literally 30 minutes after we finish. Super Gamecraft. They are a video game-centric channel. They post... Two words happening at the same time. It never works. They mostly focus on games and gaming news. They have a podcast every Sunday at the same time, but you can also check it out anytime on their channel, twitch.tv/supergamecraft. They are also on Spotify, just as we are. And you can check out their past broadcasts, check out their upcoming broadcasts. Tonight, they're going to be doing a special MMO stream. And, just going to be playing. Feel free, please, after this show to go hang out with them for a few minutes or a few hours. They're pretty open-minded. They're a lot more loose with language than we are here on this specific show, which, to each their own on that. If you're not comfortable with language, that's why we try to cater to that, because we do want to create a lot of people I've seen other streamers do, and how they want to do their channel is their business, but it is... They do market themselves as soft R, just a heads up. Whereas we do try to be PG-13, and just keep that in mind. But a lot of good people, lots of good friends of mine, people that I hang out with, and I do have a lot of in-depth philosophical discussions with them too. So it's not, just sitting there watching people play video games. They do get into stuff for a good while. Other than that...
Wait a minute, we're PG-13? We get one curse word per stream? Ooh.
No.
We get one F word per stream.
PG-13 is what I put it. We get one F-bomb per stream if we feel we need to use it. Otherwise, we've gone a couple streams without saying it, and I'm very proud of all of you for that. But no, I don't care if you want to say shit don't do that. But if you say shit or ass or whatever, those words have been all around forever. Most people say that in their daily lives anyway. But I do like that we kind of stay away from stringing every other word with an F-bomb. I was in the military. I spoke that language for a while. I'm good to relax and have a little self-control in my life somewhere. So, that's...
Absolutely fair. Though I feel like now we need a counter that it has been so many streams since we've dropped an F-bomb. That could be fun.
It could be fun. It doesn't mean that it's going to be one that we build up and we just make up for lost time, though. The rule is still there.
True.
Right, a whole episode devoted to it, and I'll just quote Boondock Saints.
Yeah, we are coming to the end of the line here, though. I do want to say thank you to everyone who watched. To anyone listening, please feel free to join us. We are now on Tuesday nights. My name is Petey York of the Ryder Brothers. We'll see you next week.
Good night, everybody.